have a couple of things to discuss. We have a couple of things to discuss tonight. First of all, is our election. And the way our election go, we wanted to, hopefully we were doing it by in person, but unfortunately we had to do it tonight on a Zoom meeting. So hopefully everybody here that's here, you're welcome to participate, of course. And you can nominate yourself and nominate somebody else. It's been difficult for us to get people to volunteer for our organization, but luckily we got hardcore people here that want to contribute and keep this fine little organization going. And with that, and also our guest speaker tonight is Dr. Dewey Caron, and I have not seen him yet. I just texted him. Hopefully he did not forget. He's supposed to fly out tomorrow to go to Colorado to give a speak at the Colorado Beekeepers Convention. So hopefully I get my fingers crossed. With that, Janine, shall we start with the election?
It sounds good.
Okay. First up.
Okay.
Go ahead, Janine. You're going to say something.
You're going to tell who is up for election?
Yes, for election is the president and vice president and our treasurer. Our secretary is not up for election, and 2 board members are not for election, but 2 board members are up for re-election, and that is Janine and Ron Biasca. And president, of course, is me. I'm also up for re-election, and we're finally going to nominate somebody for our vice presidency, which has been vacant for almost 2 years. So, and our treasurer. So I begin with the easy one. The treasurer, Alan, I nominate you for re-election.
Do I get to second?
Of course, if you want to.
I do.
Alan, do you accept the nomination? He's muted. Alan.
Did he step away?
Well, guess what?
No, I'm here. I just muted myself. I accept the nomination.
Okay.
Thank you.
All in favor of electing?
Oh, wait. Are there any other nominations for treasurer?
I know it's very hard, but it's free. It's open. Here's a chance to participate. If nobody is,
I'll be happy to, if somebody wants to run and take the position, I'll be happy to transition and train them. So not like you would get have everything dumped on you.
I don't hear anybody. I don't see any hands waving. Okay.
So I'm going to call the election, and all in favor of electing Alan as our treasurer, say aye.
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 Aye, aye.
Okay, Alan, you're.
Oh, wait. Are there any nays?
No.
Okay.
Okay.
Now for board members, there's 2 positions, Janine's and Ron. Are there any other nomination? Anybody want to be on the board? Now is your chance.
I have a question.
Yes.
Wasn't it my position that was up for a re-election rather than Ron's?
No,
Okay.
that was a court answer, wasn't it? Yeah.
It's a German answer.
We don't want to lose you, Rebecca.
Well, no, I don't want to go anywhere, but I thought that it was mine that was up for re-election.
No, it's fine.
Okay. Okay. Good.
Okay, I don't see any volunteers stepping up to be on the board. Janine? I will nominate you then for re-election of the board.
I second the nomination.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Are there any no's?
Aye.
Are there no no's? Jeannie, I guess you're gonna have to work with me again for 2 years if I get reelected.
Okay, the history keeper, huh?
Yes. Okay, Ron, are you there?
Yep, can you hear me?
I'm gonna nominate you for board member.
Okay.
Are there any other nominations?
Silence.
Ricketts.
I second Ron.
Okay. And I didn't hear anybody else. Chris Marty, do you want to be? You just arrived.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Rebecca.
Can you give the parameters of the board's length of service, how until reelection, and a few things like that? I'm not volunteering. I just don't know.
That's a good.
What does the board do?
Okay, the function of a board member is for 2 years, but they can be re-elected for unnumbered terms. It's for 2 years. Okay, the main responsibility of a board member is to assist and help the association and be a spokesman for the enlarged membership and bring ideas to the board. It's kind of like a staff. There's a president, vice president, and secretary treasurer, and the board kind of assists the board, the association in their daily function. They bring ideas to the and have the discretion to remove presidents and vice president if so. So
Thank you.
they don't have any what you call. They gotta attend the meetings and bring their ideas. You don't have to be a long-term beekeeper. You don't even have to be a beekeeper. It's preferred that you do know bees, but you have to be interested in bees and yeah.
Thank you.
Chris, you mentioned, not to put you in the spot, you mentioned, would you be interested ever to be on the board in the future?
You're talking about Chris Marnie?
Chris Marnie, yes.
Oh, no, but thank you very much.
Okay, I just wanted to be open to the membership. Okay, it's like every volunteer organization, it's hard to get members, it's hard to get people to volunteer. I have to say our board works well together. We function well, and our association is done very well under the stewardship in the last 4 years. Our previous President Eric, our association survived the COVID epidemic and it's in a strong financial position. And we've had our first honey tasting event last year again, and this year we will have our second one. So it's a fun organization to be part of.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so the next position is the vice president.
Do
And
we have our vote?
do what?
I don't remember voting yet for Ron.
Ron, yeah, I'm jumping the gun. We got him. Ron, I nominate you for a board member.
Okay.
Will you accept?
I accept.
Any seconds?
I second.
Okay,
And seconded him too.
okay.
Okay.
All who voted for Ron, say aye.
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 Anybody against Ron, say no. Ron, you're with me for the next 2 years, hopefully.
Okay.
Okay, now I have the pleasure and the honor to nominate Dick LaForge. We've been without a president for vice president for 2 years, and Dick has graciously accepted my invitation. So anybody want to second his nomination?
I will be happy to second his nomination.
Are there any other nominations? I guess there are none. So all in favor of voting for Dick? Aye.
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 Now for the last position is the position of president. And I'm hoping to let you know, Rebecca, you want to know, I can't pronounce your last name. The president can only be elected for 2 terms. So can the treasurer and the secretary. I don't know the secretary, but the president, the vice president can only be for 2 terms. If I'm correct, it's probably only the president, but for 2 terms. And I've been acting for actually 18 months, and I've been the president for the last 6 months, so it counts as 2 years. So I'm up for re-election.
I would like to nominate you, Hank Harrison, to be our president. I think you've been doing a fine job of leading our organization. Will you accept?
Yes.
I second that.
I third that.
Okay, I'm honored. I'm honored that you have confidence in me. So
Oh, and John Winsler has his hand raised.
okay.
No, I'm just voting for him.
Very good.
Use again.
I just hope it's not that you nominate because nobody else wants the job. I hope there's other people that want to take it. It's have a good people working with me, and it's kind of fun. And I'm moving up in the years, but it keeps me young. It keeps me engaged, and it's been an honor to work for the board.
You've done a great job, Hank.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed to me?
Hank for president.
Congratulations.
Okay, so I think we're done with the elections.
Yeah. Now, one thing that I do want to mention, I'm concerned. I have not seen Dr. Dewey signing up.
Would you like to try to contact him?
I already did.
What time did he say he'd start speaking?
6:30.
Well, the first time we had him, he came in right at 6:30, so.
Okay, I'm panicking. You know
26.
me. The German in me is panicky.
Yeah, I get it.
Could you send him a text saying it's 6:26?
I can try it again.
Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Dewey Caron.
Dewey, Caron. Who?
Do we care enough to have this guy come and speak to us again?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's a bee podcast and he had a 20-minute discussion that he was the main speaker about this specific topic that I partially listened to. It was good. I wonder if Alan could give us a heads up on what the planning is for the honey tasting.
Well, we're out getting a recruiting sponsorship. We've got a sponsorship letter drafted, and if we can send you a draft of the letter, and as well as the businesses that we're going to contact and who's contacting them, and if you want to add to that list of potential sponsorships, let me know, and I can send you the fundraising letter as well as the list, and then we can add to that.
Great. What about, who's designing the flyer? Kara, Nosterman said that she has graphic arts training. I don't know who else has it, but it would be nice to get someone to do a nice job this year. I could say that with confidence because I was the one that did last year. And it was just, what I could do on my computer without
Our
graphics.
business is Kara. Our business will donate the poster printing, but if someone else wants to do the designing or at least like the background image of the poster, that would also be really helpful. And I can help do the layout and we can do some posters to put around the community.
I'm happy to help work with somebody else on that. I have some experience, but I wouldn't consider myself a great graphic designer.
Well, if you and I wanted to get together, obviously at another time, and we could talk about the poster design, I think that would be great. We can do it together.
I like that.
Okay.
I think we got a little poster subcommittee form, so contact Kara or Rebecca for if you'd like to help them out.
Cost
Oh, and Dick LaForce, congratulations. You're vice president now.
Oh, good. You took advantage of my absence, did you?
Yes.
Okay. Well, Hank, you're out.
What'd you say?
Oh, nothing.
He's being silly.
Yeah. I had a rehearsal, so I had to quit at 6 and boogie back home.
Thank you.
I just sent not a text message to Dewey. It's been delivered, but I don't think he's read it. So I'm kind of concerned. I hope that it's not my first time as a failure here. I'm kind of worried.
We might have to start a recall.
Well, at least we have Chris who listened to part of his talk.
Well, maybe somebody could pull it up and we could listen to it.
Do you have it recorded?
No, it's a recorded podcast. I just listened to it. If anybody could listen to it, I would have to look it up.
Debbie, you have a question?
Yeah, how much does it cost to sponsor? Like when you get businesses to sponsor, what does that cost?
You mean a sponsor for the Honey Festival?
Oh, that's just for the Honey Festival?
Yeah, we call for sponsors, and so far we got 2 already, and we get many more. And that's what brings up that we were going to do our call out people, businesses, everything during the month of June, but I think we're going to extend it all through July because we got about 30 businesses to contact.
And how much are we asking from businesses?
Alan, can you answer that?
$1,000. There's different levels of sponsorship. 1,000, 500, and 250, and then people could also be a worker bee sponsored by donating some kind of product or gift certificate from their business.
Oh, okay.
And actually, I think, don't we have like 3 sponsors now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Bear River, Coast Central, and McRae Nissan.
Eel River?
Bear River.
Okay, Bear River. Okay, good. Hey, I don't know what to do. I think that
Well,
Dewey never once. I've been in contact with him. He's kind of a friend of mine, and I checked emails. I have no emails from him, and I have nothing. And I just text him again. It just says delivered.
well, the Beekeeping Today podcast, sponsored by Better Bee, has an 18-minute podcast, Dr. Dewey Caron on supering, and it was done on May 20th.
Maybe you should call him, Hank.
I did. It goes to a voicemail.
Oh, bummer.
We can talk in the meantime about anything, Alan, you have to say about the Honey Festival.
Let's see. Why don't you ask me some questions?
Okay.
Honey, how are you dealing with honey cells, and how are you dealing with other things that are not honey that might have vendors, like plants or product or whatever?
I think one thing that we met last month in May, we met at I'm sorry, Janine, can you help me with the lady's name whose house we met at?
Danielle.
Danielle, yes, thank you. My apologies. Anyway, we met, and one of the things that we talked about, very important, didn't come up with a decision, but we need to make that decision, is whether we want to have the event catered similar to how we had it catered last year, or if we want to have food trucks available, and basically let the food trucks handle the food aspect, food preparation and serving. We could, as a club, as we develop a honey tasting line, we could have, cheeses and little things to cleanse palates. But somebody wanted a meal, they could go to the food truck for that meal. The advantage of doing that is that we could have a much lower, ticket price, and encourage more people to come. And so there was a positive response with the membership that was at the planning committee meeting, but I'd like to kind of throw that idea of having food trucks cater the event to the people here to get their feedback and maybe make a final decision on where we want to go with that.
I feel like that would be a really good draw to the community to have food trucks there. It seems like it would be enticing.
I agree with that. I think that having just finger foods is enough for what we're doing, and then that fills that gap for anybody that wants more.
Yeah. Also more choice for people to order stuff where, well, catering has choices too, but food trucks supply the amount that people order. The catering supplies a huge pile, whether people eat it or not.
It's also a good way to get more of the community involved as well.
One drawback about food trucks is they're kind of a big time suck. So I mean, I don't know if you could have like a menu in advance about, quick to prepare type things.
By the way, I just checked my email and way back, and when I sent him the registration, he sent back, he says, I did successfully register, Henry. So that was last Thursday, June at 12:13 p.m. So he did. And of course he accepted. So I don't know what to say.
He may have gotten his dates confused.
You could send him a new invite in case he's struggling to open. I mean, sometimes like I struggle with Zoom, like I go to open it for a meeting or whatever, and I can't find the link, and I've got to struggle to go through emails, and then I get on the email and then it does something like I did today. I haven't used Zoom for a while, so it's in this update mode for like 3 or 4 minutes. So it's kind of irritating.
I had a question regarding some of the sponsorship stuff for the Honey Fest. This is Gabe, by the way. I have a meeting set with the co-op on Tuesday, and I spoke with my contact there, and the way that
Dr. Dewey Caron.
Oh yes, they're good. I met him.
I did. I'm sorry to cut you off, Gabe.
Hold that thought.
Hi, Dr. Dewey. Karen.
Good evening.
Good evening. I was kind of worried. The German me got worried.
Okay. Henry had said, you told me 6:30 you have your discussion and start a little bit later. So
okay.
I was stuck behind traffic in Arches National Park. That is what my problem too.
Oh no, we're glad to have you.
Thank you, thank you.
So I would like to all our members here, I would like to introduce Dr. Dewey Caron, our guest speaker tonight. And this, I think, his second or third time of speaking to us. And he's always welcome, and let you know a little bit about the gentleman. You're the Emeritus Professor of Entomology and Wildlife Biology from the University of Delaware, and also affiliate professor at University of Oregon, Oregon State University, correct?
Correct.
And he has written several books, and we used the book honeybee biology and beekeeping, and which we actually use in the classroom instructions here for camp program. And you're currently the content and communication specialist for the Oregon Master Beekeeper Program. Dewey, can I ask you, what is that? What do you do there?
So I'm the one that's try to set up forums, get speakers, arranges for some of our material. I do almost all of the testing, sort of I've worked up the guided studies that we do for our journey level, work with the master students on their capstone project. So I'm sort of the Wendy of the Oregon Master Beekeeper Program.
Okay. And also want to mention that you are, I think I consider you being an expert on Africanized bees. Do you go down to Panama and Bolivia? Did you go this year too or not?
I did. I came back at the end of February. We had a very unusual year there with our Africanized bees. And Eugene, the editor of American Bee Journal, has just asked that I do a series of articles on Africanized honeybees, but particularly with the emphasis of what American beekeepers, U.S. beekeepers are doing to cope. So I'm going to do a series on New Mexico, Arizona, California, Florida beekeepers Texas trying to cope with what they're doing, and that applies for all of us that are really struggling with trying to keep the stock that we want, trying to improve the stock, trying to deal with bees that sometimes become a little bit too much to try to handle. So I think Africanized beekeepers have something to tell to the rest of us. So I hope to bring out some of their stories.
Okay. Dewey, are you ready to get started?
I am ready.
Okay. The floor is yours.
Oh my, thank you. Apologize for giving you a little bit of a fright here. I was rushing to try to get out of the park with traffic. Proactive reactive supering. How do you manage? My email is there if we don't get a chance to get some of your questions answered. I'm going to try to do this a couple of different parts a little bit, and so we should have enough time for questioning. Saturday is Flag Day. Proudly she waves. We all know for sure that our bee colonies can be blue, they can be red. The flowers can be blue, the flowers can be red. And beekeepers can be in their outlook in terms of national, international, and state politics, blue and red. But I think Flag Day recognizes that we stand for union rather than division, when we stand for diversity rather than the good old boy network that has sometimes been the level in the past. So may she wave proudly, and may we paint our bee colonies blue or red, whatever we wish, and have our bees visit those blue and red flowers for their own gain, of course. So the beehives can be blue or red flowers too, but beekeepers are both. I thought I'd just throw this in, no comment on that in terms of what might be our divisions. A present for you on World Bee Day, which was past month. Ken Winters, California photographer, gave us this photo of Angelina Jolie with bees. About an 18-minute shoot for her. This is one of the best of some of the shots that came out. There's also an audio that goes along with it. And what was really neat was the photo that was done a number of years ago, 1981, of Richard Davis, the California beekeeper, by Richard Avedon. They set bees up to get onto a person like this with a piece of pheromone of the queen in beeswax, and then they take it away for the photographs. And Ken Winters happened to use the exact same piece of beeswax with the embedded queen pheromone that Richard Avedon used all the way back in 1981 to take his photo. So in honor of our past World Bee Day, Angelina Jolie with callback to Richard Davis. You've seen the headline. Started 2025 almond pollination season was met with unprecedented colony losses, which have shaken the beekeeping industry. And partly as a result, Project APIS-M, the Honeybee Health Coalition, and the two federations put together a very quick survey in terms of what has been happening with the level of losses of colonies in this past year. Their initial press release revealed that over 1.1 million honeybee colonies were lost, raising alarm for pollination and agriculture. They continued their survey. They eventually, with their survey results, said that particularly mostly for commercial beekeepers, 1.6 million colonies were lost in the last year's period. So that's April to March of 2025. Mounting to, for their holdings of those individuals, a 62% level of loss. They ended up surveying, this was very robust, 702 beekeepers, and beekeepers that were then holding about little over 1.8 million colonies, which they estimate is based on another agency, the National Ag Statistical Service, NASS, is about 68% of the colonies, the holders of about 68% of the colonies in the U.S. So very, very robust in terms of getting numbers from individuals. They started with 6 commercial beekeepers that had a very heavy loss. And then their level of loss, just in bee colonies alone, $224.8 million, just in the loss of a colony alone. That is figuring a colony of bees is worth $200. So very, very significant losses reported. And as a result, in our journals this spring, it's all over the news. John Miller, the one What's Important in the May Bee Culture magazine. Also, Ross Conrad from Vermont with his colony loss survey in the same issue. American Bee Journal, Charles Lindner, commercial beekeeper out of Illinois, Thinking Strategically, and also a second one by Mr. Lindner in the month earlier in the May ABJ. And we have seen it, and of course, many of you are well aware that there are a number of different types of groups that want to have donations and have ongoing efforts to save the bee, including the pollination protection group that's out of San Francisco. There's Save the Bees. There's several of those. Planet Bee. So there's a number of groups that are seeking to try to make aware to others within the industry and without, and commercial and political individuals and others that might be able to help, federal agencies, for example, that we are having some issues with our bee colonies. So here is a look at bee colony losses in the U.S., and these are based on the Bee Informed survey. So that back in 2016-17, upper left, 33% of the colonies were the estimate of the loss on an annual basis by beekeepers. And as you scroll across the next line, and then the last two lines, 23, 24, Bee Informed has gone out of business, but that survey has been picked up by a group of apiary inspectors, University of Auburn and Oregon State University. And you can see the last 2 years, 55%, and this particular last year, based on the Project APIS M survey, 62%. And you can see if you're going from that 33 to 62, that trend line is not at all the way we'd like to see what's happening. It seems to be getting higher and higher in terms of levels of losses, annual losses. So we know we have losses. We have losses in our backyard colonies, the sideliners as they're growing bigger. Sometimes we'll have heavy losses as we're trying to refine our mite control. Some seasons we might have heavy losses. But what does it mean to have 55% or 62% annual level of losses? We know that you can make up losses, and traditionally we've been thinking that losses that are in that 20-25% range. Some of your colonies are going to get big. You're going to be able to make nukes from them. You're going to be able to split. And so you can make up losses. You can do that early enough in the spring, for example, on almond pollination rentals, that the colonies then, by the time they're needed for other pollinations or needed for honey production, are up to scale by doing that division and making nukes, 20-25%. But can we say the very same thing now that it's 50%? It's more than 50% on an annual basis. Not all of the loss is just over winter, although as backyarders we experience that more commonly as an overwinter loss. Commercial beekeepers talk about losing during the season, somewhat on a par, somewhat same types of numbers of colonies that they have to make up. They have to bolster. They have to do some management so that they're taking from their stronger colonies continually, not just for early spring to make up the overwinter losses, but kind of continuously through the year. So 20-25%, that's tough. And as backyarders, none of us like to lose any colonies, but levels at 50%, can we make up those level of losses? I've been doing since I've come to Oregon, and now 16 years ago, a PNW, Pacific Northwest Honeybee Survey.com, and I published the results on that same survey that the individuals take, and it's an electronic survey. The survey I do is mainly of the backyarders, or we want to call them hobbyists or small scale beekeepers. those individuals that have, as shown upper left, 3 colonies and a nuke, or 2.5 colonies, 3.5 colonies. But we also survey our commercial beekeepers. We do that differently because my backyarders, I ask about management, things that they do to help colonies along, interventions, managements that involve equipment pieces, for example, small screen bottom boards, and what they might do for both chemical and non-chemical mites control. Since the commercial beekeepers do all of that almost every month in one bee yard, those questions are not appropriate. So we do a different survey for the beekeepers. And what I'd like to emphasize is the first part I do, and that is the levels of losses. So I've been tracking these losses. This is a 16-year record of losses. The heavy red line on top with those numbers are commercial, or our backyard beekeepers. You see, and up until 2022, they were heavier, they were higher numbers than the blue line, which is the commercial beekeepers. I'm sorry, the red line. The heavy red line is backyarders. The bright red line is our commercial beekeepers. Commercial being defined here as more than 50 colonies, backyarder less than 50 colonies. And you can see up until roughly 2022, 23, the levels of losses of the larger scale beekeepers were averaging around half of the level of losses of our backyarders. In years when that losses were heavy, 213, for example, 217, 219, you can see no matter what your scale of beekeeping, you had heavy losses that year. Now the red, I'm sorry, the blue in this is a listing of the losses from the Bee Informed. And I had started the survey to see how accurate the Bee Informed was in terms of our backyard beekeepers. And you can see it's not, but it follows very clearly, up until just recently, follows very clearly the commercial beekeepers. And the reason for that is their report of level of loss. For example, this past year, 62% of commercial is the number of colonies that they had in the fall, and and the number they then had in the spring. So that in a survey of a combined backyarders, small scale, that is 50 to 500 colonies, and or sideliner, and commercial, it's really a report of commercial, because one commercial with 10,000 colonies, their level of losses are going to basically really override even 500 backyarders, average of less than 5 colonies each, even though their levels are higher, our levels of loss are higher. So this is a little bit different. This is just the level of loss during the winter. Looking more at different clubs, we find that trend line. Here are 2 clubs. The top one is Lane County, which is the city of Eugene. The bottom one is the city of Portland, Portland Urban Beekeepers, or PUB. And you can see the dotted lines there is their trend lines. And that's exactly opposite in terms of trends and levels of losses that I showed earlier for the commercial beekeepers. So it's quite a contrast between the two in terms of what's happening to us in backyarders with our bees versus what might be happening to our commercial beekeepers, particularly the last couple of years. We look in terms of our level of loss in terms of variation as well as just level of loss. So here on the left, the 3 lines are showing summer losses, winter losses, and then annual losses. The 3 graphs on the right are the other state that I do a lot of this for, Washington, as well. And you can see that losses vary from no loss to 100%, but the level of loss for backyarders is primarily there. The middle look there, the blue illustration, is primarily winter, not having as heavy a loss during summer. And as a result, their annual losses then, which we have to take into account because you can't lose the same colony twice, basically. But we have a different way of trying to measure that. Is different. Washington State, you can see the level of losses are higher. And I point this out because in our national beekeeping survey, I do not have 2025 because the Auburn has not released the numbers yet. I'll point out that that in the last three of the last 3 years, and it will apply again this year. So 3 of the last 4 years, annual losses have been above that 50% mark. And in part, some of that is due because as we look at backyarder numbers, the blue in the middle is the wintering numbers that I report for Pacific Northwest. And then the yellow at the bottom is annual losses. The variation, what's actually occurring is in a much narrower range than it is among the commercial beekeepers. It's fair to say that we have some commercial beekeepers that are having very heavy losses. And there are different ones each year, but there are some that have some very extensive losses. And their losses are both, you can see the yellow on the bottom and the blue in the middle are much heavier during the year, the annual part of the year, as well as over winter. And in fact, they're about equal, or have been for the last 3 or 4 years. So with that in mind, not only were surveys done to look at the level of losses, but the U.S. Department of Agriculture also took samples. They took samples from 6 commercial beekeepers that had moved their bees out of wintering locations, a couple of them coming from storage houses, others from the field, had moved them to California for almond pollination. And their colonies were continuing to dwindle. And what came out of the wintering locations was, in their estimation, very poor colonies. So the U.S. Department of Agriculture out of Beltsville took some samples from 6 commercial beekeepers, took samples from colonies that were collapsing, were just not doing anything, going downhill. And from the same 6 beekeepers, colonies that were strong, colonies that were not showing this level of stress. And that first report of what they have found is now out and available. So if you use your search engine, virus and vectors tied to honeybee colony losses, Zach Lamas from part-time employee at USDA who has left USDA, Jay Evans, who many of you may know, as well as the others who are USDA people from both Beltsville and also from the Baton Rouge laboratory. Now, this has not been peer reviewed, but you know, with minor edits and changes, probably will eventually will work into our known literature. Now, remember, science is not a one and done. Science is a continuum. And so this is the first salvo, the first report of looking at colonies that at least this early spring were in pretty tough shape and were not up to snuff in terms of meeting their pollination demands. So what did they find? They found heavy levels of deformed wing virus, both A and B, and also quite heavy levels of acute paralysis virus as well. In their analysis. They found the Baton Rouge portion of this found that when they looked for a genetic marker that is at least one of the pathways to resistance for mites to the chemical amitraz, they found high levels of resistance to that amitraz. In other words, this chemical pathway is being compromised, and the mites are able to take the chemical and live with it rather than being killed off by the chemical amitraz. They found mite numbers high relatively high, but that has to come with an asterisk because with the collapsing colonies, there were not many mite numbers, but from what they were looking at, both with mite poop and the high levels of virus incident, concluding that the mite numbers were probably high, indicating that maybe the 6 beekeepers, their mite control plan, their program might not have worked as they thought it might work for the year. Surprisingly, also, nosema levels were high, almost on a par in terms of levels for these virus levels. And through a separate analysis being done at Cornell, the preliminary is that, yes, they're finding high levels of the pesticides that we put into our bee colonies, as well as kind of surprisingly pipinyl butoxide, which is an insecticide used, not very powerful, but it is used in combination with other chemicals to make them more effective. Not only insecticides, but others as well. And so it may be contributing because of what we're seeing with perhaps some of the levels of after fungicides have been applied to crops such as almonds and the nut crops and some of the fruit crops, why we're still seeing a pesticide kill, where when we just test that particular fungicide by itself, it doesn't show the high levels of loss. So that is what some of the preliminary has found. It basically is a situation where if you go and look for it, you will find it. And with that very high level of loss, particularly of these 6 cooperating beekeepers, by the way, 6 of the largest that we have in the U.S., I guess not surprising that when we looked for it, we were able to find what's going on. Still have not ruled out that there's been a variance of a virus, as Randy Oliver has suggested, and some others. Still have not ruled out that there's we're messed up the gut microbes. Still have not ruled out that some other factors might be involved, but once again, it seems, as it did back in 2006, 2007, in doing our postmortems of bees that we indicated killed with CCD back at that particular point, that it seems to be not just one factor, but probably the major factor is the damage mites do feeding on pupae and the adult bees, and particularly their enhancement of viruses such as the DWV and the acute paralysis viruses, which are so harmful for bees. Okay, I'm going to have you pull up a seat, and we'll get on to our aspect of our topic tonight. But perhaps I can try to handle a question or two that has come in that you've come up with on the losses or on the reports of losses. Is there anything that anyone has a question that they'd like to cover like that, get some answers to, if I can answer them?
Yeah, Dewey. Why do commercial operators use that Amitraz? Do a lot of them use that? I heard that everybody uses that in the commercial beekeeping.
They do. They use it repeatedly, and one of the issues, really, Henry, with that is that they're not using the chemical that the approved formulation of the material. They're not using Apivar strips. So they have bought the chemical and they are making up their own home remedies. Plus, they're in many cases using it, I hate to say year round, but essentially year round, keeping it in longer, replenishing it more frequently, more than the Apivar. We could use it twice in a season. We could use it in the spring. We could use it in the fall, and that's by the approved label. So they're basically using a chemical off label, and that leads to underdosing, that leads to overdosing, that leads to errors and mixing, etc. A number of extension studies have demonstrated that when operators mix up their own material within 3 repeated uses of the same material with their same formula, they are doing something incorrect. The vast majority, over 50%. So they're using Amatraz, but they're not using Apivar, so that when we put Apivar in our colonies, we're still getting that 92 to 95% efficacy that is the hallmark of that product. So for our backyard bees, depending on what their origin is, it's still working, but they're not using it that with the approved chemical method on commercial scale.
So are you saying, should we avoid it? I mean, we sort of do,
So
but-
far, it's a tool. It's a good tool. It can work. It's not a quick knockdown. But if you can get into colonies early enough in spring, it's a material that will help really hold down mite reproduction in the spring. And if you then look after you've taken supers off in August, whatever, July, August, when you're taking supers off, if you then do a mite sampling and your mite numbers are generally low, and what we're saying is less than 6 mites for your sample of 300 bees, it is again a product that can be used effectively to keep the numbers there. But if in July and August you do your sampling and you find 15 mites, 20 mites, 32 mites, it's not a good product at that point. It's just designed to be slow acting and good over the long haul. But if you've got 32 mites in a 300 bee sample in August, you've got to try to get the mite numbers down as quickly and as rapidly as you can. We only have one product that does that. That's the formic acid, which has lots of other issues with it as well. So it is a tool, and for most of us in the backyard, it is still performing as we hope. For those that start bees, that get bees from other large beekeepers, it is not as good a tool, because those bees that are being sold to us have been under this heavy treatment with Amataz, with that regime. That's a long answer. I'm sorry about that.
Okay, well, I've got a backup. Next one is commercial beekeepers. Well, they're sort of forced to either stop using it or use higher doses, which is going to, run into the ground really quick. And so what are commercial beekeepers going to do? And how serious has this loss been? Is this a game changer for the businesses themselves? If you combine the lack of effectiveness of their favorite product with the high economic costs they're having to already pay to replace bees.
Yeah, some great questions in there, and we don't have any immediate answers. It seems that the vast majority of them are attempting to make up those losses to meet their other pollination demands. This year, honey production has become very minor for the commercial beekeepers, because most of our honey is imported, and they can't produce honey for the price that is being sold in our markets and to our industrial users of honey. So you make your money on pollination, but you got to have strong colonies to pollinate. You can skim by on some of the crops where bees pollinate as an insurance policy. For example, some of the fruit crops, as one example, rental to canola, rental to some of the oil seeds. Not so much to the seed producers. They have to have strong colonies, because we're asking the bees to do the impossible. We're asking bees to go from a high value to them plant, such as the male onion flower, to a female onion flower that has nothing to offer them at all. So we're really asking them to do an impossible task, and the only way we get around that is with fairly strong colonies. So it remains to be seen what exactly will happen. the demand for nukes and package bees has fallen off. And so some of the commercial beekeepers were able to make up some of their losses by buying up those nukes and package bees that would have been sold to our backyarders this spring. So, you know, was it the perfect storm that won't appear again? It's really worrying to me that in the last 3 years, their losses have been 50% or greater in the last 3 or 4 years. That's really I mean, how can you make up those level of losses year after year after year? I didn't
So
really
are you
answer your
saying that
question, but there are a number of great questions in there.
were you saying that the interest or that backyard beekeeping is declined some, that it's no longer the as popular as it was before?
Dick, that's a good question. We have no way of really answering that well because we don't know how many there have been right along. But it does seem from a number of different corners of the country that demand in terms of sales of equipment and bees and nukes and packages seems to have fallen off. Yes.
Our class enrollment, you know, was pretty good this year, but the 2 years before it were lower. We peaked out at about 50 beginners. That was what, Janine, 5 or 6 years ago, maybe a little more. And now we had what, basically 20 active students this year. I would say that the people who are really interested, there's as many people who are really interested, but there's a drop off in the more casual interest people. So we're happy with that. That's okay.
Yeah, that's true. We're happy with that. Yeah, too.
Okay.
Our measure in terms of our clubs, where we used to have we have attendance that were 40 to 50 individual range. Now number of clubs, big clubs, are having 15 sign up for the beekeeping short course. The other issue seems to be we have a churning of beekeepers, so that if you look at who has been a beekeeper and then 3 years down the road, 80% of those individuals are no longer beekeepers. Now that's been replaced by others that are beekeepers, and that's where it seems to have weakened the others that want to start up with bees.
Okay, thank you, Dewey. Are we ready to go with your presentation?
I'm ready to go. Okay, so take a seat here, pull up a chair, and we'll go with our active supering, proactive or reactive. I've been doing a series of Beekeeping Today podcasts, which Jeff Ott calls the bonus shorts. And the one that I just have been doing has been on swarming. I've done a couple that involve swarming and now a couple on supering. The one that'll come up on supering will be out the second week, 2 weeks from now on the 17th. Some additional information, if we don't pick it all up this evening, you can find in the Beekeeping Day podcast on supering. So spring equals losses. Something what we're trying to figure out losses and trying to make up losses, plus swarms. Certainly, some years are swarmier than others, but the no colonies from both of those things mean colonies that we want to super. All right. So this has been for us in some other areas as well an unusual swarming year, but that's not unusual because any amount of swarming is different. What is this photo of? Is this a photo of 2 swarms or perhaps 3 swarms? Look at all the bees on the left on the ground. Is this a single queen? Is this a swarm that set up with a single queen on 2 adjacent big leaf maple branches, and then the pulled the branches down, and so the two branches separated. So this is a single swarm, or is this a swarm that had multiple queens? You know, we have to dig in and try to figure out what's going on. Actually, the person that was looking at that concluded that these were virgin queens. So probably after swarms, and probably the bees on the ground have a queen, the bees on the left have a queen, and the bees on the right have a queen, and maybe more than one in each of those as well. The Oakland group, the county on the east side of the bay, they've been tracking swarms, and to date, so the top red line is the number of calls into their swarm hotline. And certainly the last 3 years, you can see the red dot dashed and the blue dash below it, representing the last 2 years, and the solid red at the top there, representing those calls. Some of it may be more familiarity with the source to call into the swarm hotline. But you can see that in about a month and a half of swarming, they had already recorded over 750 calls into the swarm line for this particular club. Other clubs do some of the same, and from that we say that, you know, the years vary by swarming. But that's certainly a factor in terms of our thoughts in terms of management relative to swarming. Now, our standard for beekeeping is, and I alluded to this earlier, is roughly 2.5. So 2 standard colonies here with 2 boxes. One is a 10 frame and one's an 8 frame in this case. And then on the end, a half colony, and that's a 5 frame with a 5 framer on top of a new colony or a resource colony. And that resource colony can provide the resource of a new queen. It can provide brood. It can provide frames of honey, whatever may be the case. And so you can overwinter. So having that resource available means that you're not dependent on having very swarmy years where there'll be a lot of swarms and you can get your share, or having to go out into the market and buy nukes, buy packaged bees. Okay. And so with that then as your resource, then maybe one of those 2 colonies will become your honey factory. Maybe, hopefully, both of them. But if in some years, certainly we get one of the 2 as our honey factory with the supers, then you know, that's going to certainly supply most of our needs. And for most of us, the needs that we have for distribution to friends and family, and however we might dole out the honey that we gather. Now those 2.5 colonies have gone to 3.5 colonies, the nuke now on the left. And you can see each of them have 10 supers. And actually at this particular backyard, those supers were quite full. So they so the strategy of the 2.5 paid off, and taking one nuke split and using a queen from the original nuke and then making another one. So to reduce the swarming, the number of colonies that swarmed, and also have a source for queen stock if something is going on in one of our standard colonies. Okay. So 4 keys we can key into success as our colonies expand. This apiary, we prefer not to have more than 2 supers per colony, simply because the extracting facility for the 25 colonies is not the best. This is in a North Portland neighborhood, but 25 colonies, each with 2 supers, as you can understand, is a backbreaker when you have to come to harvest them. So keys to success: overwintering, having a reduced level of loss, just as the commercials. Some of our backyard beekeepers have better success in overwintering. It starts with understanding what might have happened over a winter period. Good top insulation on colonies, ensuring that colonies that are weak on stores, and then particularly mite management. Spring buildup, guiding spring buildup. Certainly some of the aspect early seasons sometimes give us more of a challenge than later seasons. But on the other hand, earlier seasons offer the opportunity to really work with the colonies, to equalize them, to keep colonies to rob from the strongest, so that and help bolster the weakest in our management, and then take nukes to make up those overwintering losses that we might have. Keeping colonies that are together is another of the three of the keys in terms of getting to having some success with the management of supering. And finally, that aspect of what we call all of beekeeping. Timing is everything, and timely supering in terms of getting supers on in a fashion there where we can help relieve congestion in the brood area, help reduce the probability that the colonies will begin swarm preparations, and having an outlet so that they don't start backfilling in a brood area. They can replenish the stores that they've used over winter on the outside frames, but then the queens quickly get into egg laying, get brood going to the frames towards the outside. And as that nectar then begins to come in, there's some place to put it. And so that is in the super itself. So I can ask a question for each and all of us is how do you super? What kind of techniques are you using in terms of the honey? As I indicated in this particular apiary, we don't want more than a couple of supers, so these supers really get packed out because of it. It's a very good location, but there's no one right way to do anything in beekeeping, and of course that is in supering. There are some ways that are more effective for some individuals, some that are more efficient for any of us, but again, there is no one size fits all, no one right way to do it. So I'm going to ask and try to respond to three aspects of that. Do you over or under super? Over super versus under supering. Do you super on the top? Do you super on the bottom, or by baiting a super as you're adding a super? And with the super, do you add a super with or without a queen excluder? So here for one of our Oregon State colonies, we're got a queen excluder, and we're now adding that first super of the season. So over supering or under supering. And I'm, again, there's no one right answer. This is the spelling bee. I'm sorry, that's incorrect. Release the bees. If you don't get the right answers, be comforted. There is no one right answer. It varies for each and every one of us. But I think one thing we can understand is that we're not going to get the bees to put honey in supers and take relief off of the expanding brood area, leading to perhaps rearing of queen cells if we leave them in storage. So one of the aspects we can think of in terms of our super managing is they're not going to be filled with ripening honey, eventually fully ripened honey, if they're still in storage. Don't leave them in the storage. So over supering is a technique that we use because it does stimulate hoarding behavior. Hoarding behavior is that tendency of bees. Then, if we add more storage space capacity, then the bees will make an effort to fill it up because of this aspect of hoarding behavior. That empty comb is a stimulation. Foundation is less of a stimulus, except again with timing. We can add the foundation frames, get the bees to draw it, and then it becomes that stimulus. So shown on the left, we've added to a colony 2 supers, and on the colony on the right, we've added a single sari. So in this instance, what we're attempting to do is to stimulate that hoarding behavior. So instead of taking one of those supers out of storage, one of the drawn comb supers or if we have nothing else, foundation, or a mixture of some drawn comb and some foundation frames, whatever, instead of doing it once and then again, adding two at the same time versus adding one. And we can look in terms of that same example of another colony. In this case, we've added 3 supers all at the same time. All of that as what we might call, or what is called over supering. And the concept is that we're going to try to stimulate hoarding behavior. And experiments have been done in a couple, 3 different locations where if indeed you add 2 or 3 supers of drawn comb versus 1, then the bees will end up storing more resources. And the experiments have been done so that the 1 did not become limiting. In other words, if you put 1 on and then forget it the rest of the season, that just may not be enough storage space. So the 1 did not become limiting in these experiments. And in at least one of the experiments in the Baton Rouge, Louisiana area from the USDA lab, they actually then crossed the colony. So they initially attempted to stimulate the hoarding behavior and one group and then not another, and then later in the season switched the colonies exactly, hoarding the trying to stimulate the hoarding behavior in the group that initially had not been versus switched to less of that stimulus. And indeed, in all cases, the colonies that were over supered stored more honey, where the honey had not become limited and just being having 1 super that's available. So over supering, if that is your objective in terms of trying to stimulate colonies to produce more, you have a need for it, you have the equipment for it, etc., is one of our techniques that might be of value in terms of trying to have a more proactive versus a reactive management in terms of supering. Okay. Now the other part of that is under supering. So the under supering then comes in as the nectar flow is winding down, or as they're filling up those supers. At that point, rather than continuing to stimulate that hoarding behavior, what we're attempting to do with under supering is to consolidate, so that we then make more efficient use of the colonies that are our powerhouses that are producing more product, that they get more of those supers that are only partially filled, the supers where the outside frames haven't yet gotten much that's been stored. They are then moved around on colonies in the apiary, so that the colonies that are doing the job of providing the resource then get those supers to go ahead and finish them up. And that also means that we would have less equipment that we have to take off. Heavier supers certainly, but less that would then come into a honey house to have to be extracted if we go from the over supering in the beginning of that nectar flow to under supering towards the end of it by midsummer. Now, there has been another study that many are not familiar with, and this has come to us out of Brazil. In this instance, they're looking at the aspect in terms of colonies that are supered with foundation, not drawn comb, but supered with foundation frames. And the premise of the study is that some of our management things that we do may induce stress. We know that with any animal that we keep, our pets, for example, other livestock, for example, that we might pen or free range, whatever, our management systems are capable of causing stress, perhaps undue stress to that animal. And as a consequence, they may not perform to our expectations. So this was the premise of the study in terms of looking at supering as needed, and that was the control for this experiment. So never having a super become limited in the amount of space available for bees, but not adding supers of foundation all at once. They did 3 treatments. They did a treatment where they added 2 supers to 10 colonies. The control had 10 colonies. 2 supers to treatment 1. Treatment 2 had 3 supers added to the colonies. And I couldn't find a good picture, but the 4th treatment, the treatment 3 of this experiment was adding 4 supers of foundation. So, results. Indeed, they found that they could demonstrate that the overstimulation, the over-supering, 4 foundation supers added at once resulted in stress. Now, what they did is they actually measured traditionally how much honey was put into the supers and how much brood was reared. The control did better than any of the 3 treatments: 2 supers, 3 supers, or 4 supers. In addition, they looked at genetic markers of a couple of precursors for beta oxidative process, and other studies have been done that has been used as a indicator of levels of stress. Beta oxidation causes bees to use up their body reserves faster, go through their life processes faster, not live as long. It has a change in terms of gut microbes, and also with the overall the development of hypopharyngeal glands. So they looked at 2 gene markers, and they found that 4 supers, as you increase the number of supers in the treatment methods 1, 2, and 3, that those gene markers were overexpressed. That is, they were telling the bee's body to do more of the processes that lead to this early aging, lead to a higher processing through their life work and lower production of glandular materials. So stimulation in case of foundation frames in this study was looked at, and the authors of the study are saying, well, this is the first time we looked at management as such, causing what we do in terms of our management decisions, our management here on over-supering, as affecting stress, imparting perhaps undue stress on our bee colonies, leading to the measurements that they were able to do, demonstrating that. This has not been done with drawn comb. It would be interesting to have this experiment repeated with drawn comb, the see if drawn comb as indeed had the same effect. When they're looking at the gene markers and the overexpression of these 2 materials, the 2 compounds that lead to the expression of stress, they found that it did not happen initially, but it was happening by midway through the season itself. So they felt that it was, in fact, that was part of the effects of it. Not sure. Again, would it happen with drawn comb as well? Okay, super.
If I could just make a quick observation.
Yeah, go ahead, Dick.
We start a lot of people with, drawn with foundation because they're starting with packages. And I think swarming, as you add a box of foundation, say as a super, swarming instead of using the foundation is quite common, regardless of what the books say for the first year. And so that might tie in with them feeling like doing something else other than building wax and putting honey in it.
Yeah, packaged bees is at our convenience as a way to start, and boy, that certainly is a stressor, because you're starting with a population that is somewhat mixed the way they make up packages, so that you'll do a big shaker box and then take out 3 pounds. So hopefully you're getting a mixture. The way they put 20 pounds of bees in a shaker box is they go into a colony, find a queen, set that frame aside, and then virtually shake all the bees out. So they're getting very young cleaner bees, they're getting the nurse bees, they're getting the middle-aged bees, and they're getting some of the foragers that are not out in the field at that time. So packaged bees, although they have that mix, but very quickly then age. And as a result, then you know, that packaged bee development is very skewed initially. So if we were to take a same look at some of these genetic markers for stress, I bet we would see them being expressed in packaged bees as well. Good point, Dick. I like that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We have to be very careful about adding more foundation with packaged bees.
Yeah, and so the objective of the study from Brazil was to try to demonstrate that stress, so that's why they likely did not say, well, let's start with drawn comb, let's start with foundation, to try to set up a situation where they might be able to see and find and measure stress. So they went looking for that. And again, science is not one and done. Super, top versus bottom versus baiting. And again, you know, how do you add the, so we're adding that first super over the queen exuder. So when we add that second, do we put it on top, or do we put it on bottom, or do we attempt to bait the super? The studies that have been done have demonstrated that it doesn't make any difference at all. Study out of Georgia a number of years ago with Keith Delplane looked at all three aspects, and in terms of the yield, in terms of colony, it didn't make a difference. If you topped, you put them on, took the ones that are on there off and put the next one on right over that queen exuder. Or if you took a frame or two out of the one that the bees are working in and switch frames with the new super that you're putting on. Whether you're doing this with over supering or simply top or bottom supering. As I was looking at this, by the way, as I was preparing for the Beekeeping Today podcast, I went and looked in terms of AI. AI has it completely wrong, by the way. They call over supering of putting supers over on top, and under supering is putting supers on the bottom. So what does AI know about all this, right? Bad hair day for AI in that respect. All righty. Again, no one size fits all in terms of our supering, and as whether we refer to super on top or on bottom. The major aspect is we need to communicate with bees, and if you put a super on top and don't advertise to the bees that it's there, they just may not find it. Every year we have failures of beekeepers that say, well, I put on that super early, but the bees never went into it. They never filled out the super for me. And there's a couple of ways you can answer that question. One, the colony was never strong enough and they always kept putting their resources down below. But the second simply is that, you know, maybe the communication wasn't two-way. In other words, the beekeeper put the super on, but then didn't communicate to the bees that there's a whole space for them to put all that nectar into. So sometimes baiting is a very effective management tool to alert the bees that you've done something different. Bottom supering, if you've got already a super on and it's starting to get full, if you go by the 7-10 rule, 7 of the 10 frames are being filled. That's heavy lifting off. You got to lift all that box off and do something with it while you put another one on and then put the back box on. And if it doesn't make a difference, you know, why do it? But we still need to communicate with our bees, whatever way that we do it. No one size fits all in terms of our management. I've got a couple of horror stories here for you in visuals to show you how sometimes some of us do it, some of us don't. All righty. And so then the last point I was making, if you super with an excluder, you have option 1, you can use the queen excluder. You have option 2, you don't use the excluder, or option 3, you use it initially. As bees start really filling in that first super, a number of beekeepers will then take the excluder off because that honey barrier is really the excluder, becomes the excluder rather than you using that piece of equipment. There is, by the way, a fourth one that some of you are aware of, and that is put the queen excluder down in front of the colony to keep the grass down in front of the colony from growing up at the entrance. So there is another option there as well. Again, no one size is going to fit. Supering. Do you want, one of the questions you're going to need to answer is, do you want more honey? Some of us do not want the extra work. Look at your back in terms of which would you rather have at the end of the season? A box of bees that has bees in two supers, moderately full, 1.5 below for brood, or do you want a colony that's got then demarrying? You got 2 boxes of brood. You got a pink box up above that's also had brood in it because you were moving brood up and down. And then you've got 5 supers to have to deal with at the end of the season. So supering, one of the questions we needed to have started with was, do you really want more honey? As Henry mentioned, I have books that some people find very useful. The Honeybee Biology, our field guide, and then the Complete Bee Anatomy Handbook. Be glad to sell you a copy of one of those if you don't have your own personal copy. Okay. At this point, I'd be glad to try to entertain some questions. I got a couple of visuals here to show you as we go along on any more questions you might have.
Yeah,
This is from a book, Do You Speak Bee?
Dewey, what I found successful is you use the queen excluder. I usually put it on the second super. I don't put it on the first one. I put it on the second one because I'm always worried about swarming, and I give them a little bit more room if she wants to move up. If there's no barrier yet, she might move in there. And then as the season progresses, if I put the queen excluder back down on the first super, and they fill up the brood then with honey.
Yeah, Hank, and that's yet another option. In other words, your first super is not for honey necessarily. It's to take that relief from the brood area. For very prolific queens, she's going to go in there and she's going to expand the brood area,
right?
Which is not a negative by any means. And so then the queen excluder goes a little bit higher. And then rather than ending up having 3 boxes of brood later in the season, you move that excluder down to get the brood out of that first box that you put on, that first quote super, only because it was above the 2 existing brood boxes. That's a good brood relief method, and in some years you're going to use that as strictly as a super for honey, and some others not.
Yeah, you can take it if it's earlier in the year, you can just take that extra box off, add a queen and have another colony.
Yeah, exactly. You can use that as a nuke.
I use a variation of what you described, which is to not use an excluder at all at the beginning, say April, and then once, especially if a little brood raising has gone in there, then I will put it under. But that kind of guarantees that the bees are going to work upstairs.
It's essentially a baiting technique to get them.
Yeah, it's a baiting technique. It's like let's let them get used to being up there and then put it in.
Let the bees make their decision of how much space they need rather than us as the beekeeper.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I have another question for you, Dewey. Does it make a difference to the bees if you use, let's say you have a 10 frame super, but you're only using 9 frames by doing the spacer, you know, you get nice little fatties. If you like honey, you get nice little fatties of comb, honeycomb. Does that, the bees don't care, do they?
They don't care. I could have thrown that one in. You know, whether you use the tool to space them evenly or you hand space them or leave a little bit of extra space on the edge. I will say that you know, no matter what way we do honey harvest, that uncapping is the most tedious part. So if you can take an uncapping device that you use and not have to dig into the comb face itself, it goes so much easier, so much faster. And 9 versus 10 in a 10 box or 7 in an 8 box. The 8 box is not quite as the issue because you actually have a little bit more extra space in the 8 box. You can still leave 8, but certainly 9 and a 10 is a very good option.
No, another question to follow up on that. What if your checkerboard nukes, if you use old drawn out foundation from last year that, you know, were honey and you do a checkerboard, does that make a difference? In other words, have one with foundation, one with drawn out comb, one with foundation?
For the supering for honey,
Yeah.
and brood area, getting brood to expand, checkerboarding is a good technique. It takes advantage of, you know, so the middle-aged bees are the bees that do the storing and the ones that do the building. And so if we can keep them busy in the hive, doing the building and the storing, we're going to have a lot less pressure on the nurse age bees to get the queen to start her replacements for swarming. So checkerboarding is a very good management, and we always need more drawn comb, and that's a rather than putting a whole box of foundation on, for example, of taking an existing box and using half the frames and checkerboarding the other half.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else with a question? This is the honeybee as a chemist. Here's another one of honeybee as a scout, all-weather bee, taking care of their activities. And finally, here's our scout bee. There's our scout bee out looking for those resources. This is a book by Alva Chubank, Do You Speak Bee? Very unique illustrations.
Oh, Dewey, I do have a question. Maybe you already talked about it, is that some people, if you put too many supers on, causes a chimney effect, right? They just go down the middle, and then on the end frames, you should never get filled up.
That's correct. In terms of over stimulating, you will sometimes get that chimney effect, so that the counterpart to that, the under supering, then helps take care of that. So you then do the consolidating on the colonies that really want to keep on going and keep on storing. So over supering begins the season, but then you finish it up with the under supering. Yes, you can get the chimney effect with that. Yes.
And I prefer to let my bees make a honey band, and then I find that the queen stays downstairs.
Yeah, so the real excluder for queens is that honey above. We don't want a honey bound condition where there's so much honey in the fall that they don't consume, that they can't expand in the spring. We call that a honey bound condition, but getting areas that have an early flow are really nicely set up for this, of getting that those cells with honey up above in the brood area, as well as the first super that's added. And then we're not going to have issues of queens going across the barrier, going across those cells. Mostly. Mostly, yeah. Never can say never with queens.
Yes, especially if you take every box off and pile it on top, that can be an issue. So when I check my bees during the honey season. I always put my honey boxes on one stand.
Yeah. 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 Good idea. Yeah, that works too. Yes. Yeah. Good management.
Dewey, you open to other questions on beekeeping? We got quite a few members here. Maybe they have some other technical question on beekeeping that they want to share or ask you. So here, guys, here's an opportunity to get some questions answered.
I could try, sure.
How does all this that you're talking about pertain to long hives?
Different cat entirely. Long hives have to be managed a little bit differently. There's a couple of good resources on long hives. I recommend those for those that are in long hives. You can actually super a long hive, maybe even a couple of supers. Long hives where you've got more than one colony in them with a follower board between them are very conducive to tower supering, where colonies on either side of the follower board then share the same super. So the honey is stored by colony on right, colony on left in one super, with the queen exuder, of course, so that queen from colony left doesn't get the colony right queen and kill her. Very conducive to that. The other thing we really need to do with long hives is make sure in fall management that the honey is all to one side, the cells that are filled with honey, your traditional honey filled frames. We don't want a colony having to decide in winter, do they go right to stay in contact with honey, or do they go left to stay in contact with honey? So top bar hives, long hives, you have to do some frame manipulation, individual frame manipulations to ensure that occurs. The other great thing with the long hives is you can have your standard colony and a couple of nukes all in that same box. And then you're using the nuke as a resource in the spring is so much easier. You just end up taking out the follower board. So I mean, lot to be said for that. Some people like long hives because then they don't have to lift boxes that are heavy. But I'll remind you that we don't actually end up having to lift supers off. You can go into a super and lift an individual frame by frame by frame by frame off. If as we age, those supers get awful heavy. So rather than trying to yank off supers up above our shoulders off of colonies, we can, take a little bit more time, go and do it frame by frame. We can use almost the same techniques, forced air. We can use the bounce and brush. The chemical doesn't work quite as well. But if you like the bee escape, you could use that and then take the frames out individually, brush the remaining bees off. So our traditional Langstroth one on top of the other, we don't actually have to lift boxes. We can lift frames.
Right.
But the long hive is so much easier.
About your honey manipulation on one end to the other, would you suggest away from the opening, put all the honey? And
yes, away from the opening. Yeah.
Alrighty. Thank you, sir.
Bring the bees towards the opening. And the other thing, as much as possible, although we're using follower boards, is to try to get them set up so they're coming in on one end rather than in the middle.
Yes.
That's tough sometimes because we got 2 or 3 colonies in one long hive, but
yes, my setup is bottom at one end only, and my honey is starting to fill on the far end from the opening. So
yeah,
keep it that way.
Yeah.
Thank
what
you.
We do with Afghanized bees is we harvest from the side. So we'll go into a colony and pull frames out from the side. Because they're a bee that once they get some honey, they quit making more of it. And so to keep them productive, you keep harvesting every week. And we do the same thing. We harvest from the sides. In that case, in traditional Langstroth, you're harvesting the outer frames from both sides.
Alrighty. Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate your answer. Thank you.
Dewey, I got so many questions for you, but I want to talk to you about the Africanized bees. have they actually moved up in California, or do you know any indication, or they're still staying down south?
So the answer is yes and no. Yes, they have moved. We're finding Africanized bee gene material further north, somewhat established in the Bay Area, established on the edge of the queen breeding area. However, the level of feral colonies that are European versus Africanized, still the vast majority of them are down south, San Diego, Riverside, Orange County. Not up into Yolo, not up into Napa, not into Alameda County.
Yeah.
Do you think that's a genetic barrier that those genes just aren't going to survive up here? I don't mean the bees, I mean the genetics is just linked with things that don't do well where it's more temperate.
That's been a nice study looked at from the people of UC San Diego, and they do indeed find the same things that set up in the southern hemisphere in Ecuador and southern Brazil and northern Argentina, where that more area closer to the tropics, closer to the equator, was mostly Africanized bees, but as you went further away south from the equator, was more European genetic material. It seems to have being set up also in California. The difference seems to be those first three counties, Imperial, San Diego, Riverside, Orange. That seems to be setting up about the same area as is the equivalent in Argentina and Ecuador and South America. So the short answer is yes, this is an ecotype, a bee that's adapted for more tropical, more semi-tropical conditions, and certainly
at the
does
Bee Club
not
meeting.
do as well in temperate areas.
I got a different question, which is totally different, but it's what's the status of registration for Veroxan in California? And well, I guess two questions. One is, what do you think of it? And the other is, what's its registration status? And what's the future of its registration status?
So they're saying it's been approved in like 42 of the 50 states so far, but not California. So I do not know what might be the reason it's not so far registered in California, unless someone has heard just recently that there's a change. I have not. What do I think of it? I wish they had used the pad technology rather than the hanging strips, because when you hang strips, the bees don't want to rear brood underneath that oxalic. It's too acidic. And so when you hang strips, you get patches on the brood frames that don't have brood underneath where the strips are. The pads, when they're put in between the boxes, afford the bees a great opportunity to walk on it, continue to walk on it, and it seems very much with oxalic that it's a continuous delivery. Is the way that we really need to go. Oxalic is not a good tool to reduce numbers that are high, but it's a very good tool to keep numbers that are low at a lower level. It really interferes, that acidification really interferes with the reproduction of the varroa mites in the cells. So it's a very, very helpful, very useful tool. So other than the hanging aspect, I know some people have read that hanging are just laying them down. That's contrary to the label, which quote is illegal, but whether they're as effective laid down on top of the frames between the boxes, hopefully we'll have some better expression after this season of people that are doing that, if they feel that it has helped to keep the levels low. I think it's the brightest thing that we have. We do not have a replacement on the horizon for Amatraz. We do not. And so our commercial beekeepers are going to have to learn how better to use the tools that we have. And oxalic acid extended has proven to be a very useful tool for a number of years in Europe, and we're now starting to use it more commonly here in the U.S.
Dewey, I can confirm with those strips, I want to call this oxalic strips. A friend of mine, Eric, and I've been using them, and we found out that we got very low mite counts in the winter time, and it seems like a good maintenance tool. We
Good
had
maintenance
very
tool.
low, and it seems like I wonder if you could use them all summer long. It
Individuals
takes
are using
56
them all.
days. Essentially, you got to keep them in for 2 months because it's a maintenance. It probably won't reduce a high population, but for maintenance, if you have already done a treatment, could you use them for just the maintenance? And I remember we did have a bee social with Janine. We looked at one colony that she used it on, and we couldn't find one mite. We did an alcohol wash. We couldn't find one mite. So I wonder if it can be used as a maintenance.
Yes, I think so. Very, very helpful. It won't bring high numbers down, you know, but it is, if numbers are low, it will help keep them at that low level.
I got a chemistry question that relates directly to that because, you know, the books are always saying don't use the same thing because for a long period of time because of resistance the mites develop. But what's your opinion on mites being able to come up with any resistance to the organic acids, you know, the formic acid and the oxalic acid, which is sort of a brute force technique, really?
It is brute force, and you know, we have really not been able to determine how the acids are actually killing mites, and so it's a little bit difficult to say that we'll find an alternative metabolic pathway, but I would not count the mites out. That is worrisome. Yes.
It's like how much is too much as far as using it? Can it be overused? I worry about that.
Me too. Me too. I don't have an answer. I don't know. We do know that if you are, for example, vaporizing when there's brood present, you have to do it about every 3 to 4 days, at least twice a week, and you have to continue that for at least a month, for 7 or 8 times. That is a tremendous amount of acidification of the colony. And it may be the reason why our commercials are losing the Amatraz as an effective tool, because they're using the two together, and they may be acidifying the colonies, and so the Amatraz is not as effective in a high acid environment.
Oh, interesting.
Interesting.
I also am curious, both of obviously the Roxanne and this question pertain to winter losses. And what are you thinking about you've probably were privy to studies about the AFB vaccine that Delon has. And that are there going to be more studies about whether it really does bring down virus loads? How does it affect queen laying? Please.
The issue that we have with products such as that and some others that are in the market is that most of our data comes from the manufacturer of the product.
Right.
And so, no, I have not done nothing with the vaccine. So I'm as much in the dark as you are in terms of that. And all I see is the same type of information, and that's just from the manufacturer, just from the Dallin people.
So you haven't heard about any researchers out in the universities that are willing to, experiment and do some research?
They have a relationship with the folks at the University of Georgia. However, Keith Delplane is retiring, and so he would be the logical one to continue that relationship. So it's a courtesy with the university, but I don't know that the university is doing anything independent of what they are doing with the university. So others, no, I do not know of any others.
Okay.
Oh, I was just going to ask, from your knowledge of biochemistry and bees and whatnot, does this look promising, and is it seem reasonable that this would affect, say, deformed wing virus, which is very different than a bacteria?
Interesting you asked that, Dick, because they do claim that they have seen some effect. The reason why they're not trying to develop a vaccine for viruses, as I understand it, is that the viruses just, the RNA viruses can change like tomorrow. And so they could develop a vaccine very effective today, but tomorrow is not effective. So there's not a money market for them to do that. That's why they went to the bacterial diseases, for example. So they do claim from some of their material that the vaccine for the bacterial, of American foul brood has some effect on DWV. So
yeah, so it seems that would be easy to check, really, by research, and would be quite remarkable. It's sort of like a gift falling from the sky.
Yeah, it's almost too good to be true.
Yeah, that's like sort of what I was trying to say.
Yeah. Good, Dick. Yeah.
Yeah, but their claims sound quite definite from the way they say it. It's not just a trace effect.
No.
Yeah.
Very. Yeah,
So
very
anyway,
much.
we'll see. Time will tell.
And time will tell. Yeah.
Any more questions? I have one
Well,
last
thanks.
one for you.
Thank
I have
you,
one
Henry.
last one, Dewey, for you.
Oh, okay, got one more.
Okay. Yeah. I'm always worried about swarming in my neighborhood. I got quite a few colony. My neighbors all love me. They like my honey, but I don't want to have to tell them there's a swarm in your backyard. Can I go get it? Okay. Is there any kind of indication that the second-year-old queen will be superseded or swarm? Is there any indication other than food congestion? Is there any indication? Somebody told me that second-year-old queens that probably will try to supersede her during that summer, because I've been finding what I thought was swarm cells were actually supersedure cells, and I'm still confused because the supersedure cells weren't where I thought they should be.
I agree. Well, the relationship basically is the older the queen, the greater the probability the colony will start raising replacement queens.
Okay.
Now they can abort, the queen can go and destroy them. So 2-year-old queens have a greater probability of starting swarm cells than 1-year-old queens in colonies. The other aspect is that a colony that has an older queen, a 2-year-old queen, all her sisters are dependent upon her chemically, and as that population grows, there's more mouths to feed chemically, and the older queens just are not able to do that. So that what we basically are trying to do with swarm management, and by active swarm management as beekeepers, is cause the colonies to not swarm, but to then supersede that later that year. So we're sort of delaying the replacement of the queen at our convenience, rather than them swarming and being an inconvenient to us and worrying the neighbors, et cetera, et cetera. In fact, they replace the queen, but they do it with supersedure. So supersedure we can view as being very positive. Swarming is positive for the bees. It does a bunch of things for them, but not for us as beekeepers.
Thank you. Any other questions for Dewey?
Oh, I got all my pet questions are coming up here. This has to do with swarming, but um, would you agree that yes, it's true that when a colony swarms, most of the mites are left behind because they're in pupas and they don't carry their pupas with them, and that this is a way that feral colonies avoid extinction because they're always swarming and leaving mites behind. And if the parent colony dies out, well, it would concentrate the mites that are left
Yeah.
behind. And if it dies out, well, so what? You've got a new colony or two or three out there.
Indeed, yeah, lots of good biology in that and all of that, Dick, and indeed that is the case. So the swarm population that leaves is predominantly the older workers and the middle-aged workers. The mites are either in the cell, in the cap cell, or they're likely on the nurse age workers or on the newly emerged drones. Those tend not to be in a swarm. So the answer is yes, most of the mites are left behind. Swarm bees tend to have a lot fewer mites. Now, because the colony is going to have a brood break in the rearing of the colony, that is also going to knock a hole in mite reproduction. So it's a win-win. The colonies leave behind a higher number of mites in their original hive, leaving all of that behind, and the original colony has a brood break so that they knock a hole into that rapid continuing reproduction of mites in their own colony. So that is why we believe that feral colonies with a higher tendency to swarm, because they're generally in smaller cavities, is a positive aspect in terms of European bees dealing with mites. Yep. All good biology and all that, Dick.
Okay, one this leads to another. This brings up the brood break question, because if the mites aren't reproducing, well, the bees aren't either. And so
Correct.
mites live as long as bees do. And so you're not really changing the ratio of mites to bees unless the bees have a way of dealing with phoretic mites, which I guess the Asian honeybees do, but maybe that genetics isn't so common. I asked this to Randy Oliver, and he said, well, he didn't really think it did much unless you actually applied a treatment during that time, which gets the mites off the adult bees. What do you
Of
think of
course, we
all
can
that?
do that. Yeah, no, but the biology that's useful here is that it's not, the season is limited. So the faster the mites are able to reproduce and build up, then the higher their eventual colony population may reach. And the higher the population they may reach is when they're going to be affecting the viruses. So that by delaying reproduction in mites, they're not going to reach that as potentially reach as high a number. So there is value in delaying the process. There is value in that.
Of
And
course.
certainly an individual female mite has only about 6 reproductions in her repertoire. And if bees are hygienic and they're uncapping cells and disrupting one of her reproductions, or 2 or 3, that's also reducing the population buildup of the mites. So that's also useful.
So I guess the bottom line for us being teaching a bee class is, especially considering that the most effective way to keep the best time to keep mites from building up is, spring, early summer, so you don't reach that peak mite population. But that's also when you want to produce more workers for honey, or making nukes or whatever your product is. So it seems like you're you may be decreasing the mite curve, but you're also decreasing the honey curve. So what should we tell people?
Well, yeah, I mean, exactly right. For most of us, if you've got 3 colonies, one of them is going to produce enough honey for your uses, and the other 2 are sort of going to be bust or not do very well. So
That is
may
the
be
case,
enough.
yeah.
Yeah, so 2 or 3 colonies, or the 2 colonies plus the half colony, is a good way to go.
Mhm.
The other aspect of that is that if we do nothing about mites, we're going to lose completely. So we've got to balance that negative effect on reducing bee population if we are seriously reducing the mite population at the expense of enough honey production.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's a dilemma, of course.
Yeah, of course, the alternative is to use formic acid and just knock the mites back that way, which is a lot simpler than making a brood break if you don't get one naturally.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. For sure. All righty.
Well, thank you, Dewey.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks
Was
a
an
lot.
excellent presentation. We're always welcome to speak to us.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it very much.
Okay.
Yeah, we
Good luck the rest of
appreciate
the
your
season.
entire career if you really want to know.
Oh, thank you.
Thank
Appreciate
you,
it.
Dewey. Thank you.
Take
Thank
care,
you,
all.
sir.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And
Yeah.
could I ask one more question? You've
Okay.
mentioned
Last
that
one.
with formic acid, you recommend 1 pad at a time. Now, what if you have a large
That's a toughie.
colony?
Yeah, that's a toughie. 2 pads, you're done in 14 days. You really knocked the legs out from under the mite. 1 pad, you dragged it out to 24 days, gone into the colony twice as many times. But you're less likely to do the damage to the queen and to the brood. So how much do you think you can afford to potentially harm the colony? If it's done very early in the season, the colony will recover. If it's done now, this time of year, the bees still have enough time to recover to rear the fall bees, although they are going to be rearing them in August. If you do it in August, it's the colony probably won't recover. If your mite numbers are that high, probably, even though you'll knock the mites back, you won't do anything about the viruses. So that it's really an early season tool, and then it'll allow the bees to do recovery. So in this, spring, the beginning of the first day of spring to the first day of summer coming up this next week, we can do almost anything with the bees, and they have a good chance to recover. After the end of June into July, we got to be a bit careful with the formic use, because it may be too late already, but secondly, we're understanding, that we don't want the mites to jeopardize our colony overwintering, but we also don't want to do management things that might jeopardize our colony overwintering.
In the spring, it's much cooler here. And so in my experience, well, if it's like below, between 50 and 60, then I think 2 pads works great. It will kill a queen in her going into her 3rd year, but I don't want those anyway. And the brood seems to rebound very rapidly. But, that vapor density depends very much on temperature. And I'm not sure, if it's between brood boxes and it's a big colony, that controls the temperature probably more than the outdoor temperature. But it certainly is cooler, and colonies are smaller in, say, March.
Yeah, formic is very tough on higher temperatures, as you've indicated. Yes, very definitely. Yep. Amen to all of that. Yep.
Well, thank you, Dewey.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Yeah, thanks a
Take care,
lot.
all.
Okay. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir.
We'll look forward to listening to you.
Oh, boy. Yeah.
So
Talk to somebody who really knows something.
Beekeeping Today podcast on the
Yeah.
17th.
I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, and Mr. Caron is just about available anytime for us. And he doesn't ask much. So I'm happy I have developed some relationship with him as far as I think he's I'm glad he likes to talk to us.
Mhm.
Now he's a busy man. He's busy. He's a lot of activity, and he's recovering from some health issues. So I was happy to see him. He's recovering.
Yeah.
Anyway, anybody else? Oh, Alan, I just want to let you know you need to talk to Cheryl. She's putting out notes about end of the month. Stop asking for sponsors. I think we should extend it. A lot of us haven't had a chance already half the month, and we have a better chance. We can always put out the flyer in end of July or whatever.
I'm going to turn off the recording.
Okay.
Yeah.